Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's video, we're going to tell you about an old-time fire starter your grandfather never told you about. So that item, of course, is going to be the majestic pine cone. So in today's video, we're going to talk all about pine cones. You know, maybe some people will learn some new facts that they didn't know. Maybe it's stuff you already knew, but either way, hopefully you get something out of this video and you enjoy it. So what is a pine cone? What's its purpose? A pine cone is actually the reproductive organ of a tree. And its main purpose is to protect the seeds until it's ready to be germinated. So you got all these scales on the pine cones during the cold winter months, during windy periods, while there's a lot of predators looking for things to eat. These scales are going to be closed, protecting the seeds until the time is right and weather warms up and the pine tree wants to release its seeds and germinate and try to grow some new pine trees. So pine cones are really quite a clever design by the creator. They work perfect for their intended purpose. And like I said, these are free. You can pick these up in the forest floor pretty much anywhere. You know, depending on where you live, there's different types of pine trees, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But you can find pine cones in most of the United States, and I'm assuming a lot of different parts of the world also have pine trees. If you're from another area, maybe Canada or Europe or India, you know, wherever, let me know if pine trees grow in your area in the comments. So going back to pine trees and cones, typically the cones will stay in the trees for about 2 to 3 years before they fall, sometimes longer, it all depends. But it seems like every, maybe 5 to 7 years, the trees get a bumper crop, meaning a real lot of pine cones, which is great if you want to start fires. So I want to show you guys something. You see this white residue on the outside of the scales of the pine cone? That's actually dried up pine pitch, which is the main thing in fat wood that helps it burn so good and start so easily and create these nice, quick fires. So everyone seems to be obsessed with fat wood, which is basically pine with a lot of resin or pitch on it, which is free on these, and people pay pretty good money for bundles of fat wood to start their fires, while there's thousands and thousands of these pine cones laying around in the forest floor. So man have actually been trying to copy the pine cone design, maybe unintentionally, maybe intentionally, but any of you guys that are into bushcraft, camping, that kind of stuff, you've probably heard of a fuzz stick, which is basically a piece of wood that they whittle and try to make these little flaky parts that catch easily with a fire. If you really look at a fuzz stick closely, then you look at a pine cone. It's basically the exact same design. So you spend all this time making these fuzz sticks when you could just go around the forest and collect pine cones. This whole amount of pine cones you see, which I'm going to say, is about 25 to 30 gallons of pine cones, believe it or not, I collected in probably less than an hour. It really doesn't take a long time. If you find a nice pine grove in your area, you can quickly fill up a bucket or bags or whatever, and not much time, collect a bunch of these little guys to help start your fires in the winter. So now that we've gone over some of the basic info about pine cones, let's talk about some more, detailed stuff that you probably didn't realize, and I was kind of shocked when I found out. Growing up here in the Northeast, the only kind of pine trees I typically see are going to be eastern white pine and red pine. The eastern white pine trees, which are one of the larger pine trees in the United States, growing up to about 150 feet tall, tend to have, let's see if I find a good example. The pine cones can range quite a bit in size. They can go anywhere from about 3 inches up to 8 inches in length. Most seem to be around 5 or 6 inches. And once opened up, they can be anywhere from about 1.5 inches to 2 inches across. So you get some of the bigger pine cones, they're good size, and it doesn't take a lot of them to fill up a bucket or a bag, like I said. The red pine tree, on comparison, has much smaller cones. They're usually more of a round shape, maybe 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches in length, and about the same in width. They look much more like a ball than the elongated cone of the eastern white pine. But what I found interesting when I started doing some research for this video, out in the western United States, they have what they call a sugar pine tree, which is actually the largest species of pine tree. And the interesting fact about the sugar pine is the cones are absolutely ginormous. They can grow up to 24 inches in length. That's correct. 2 feet in length. Can you imagine a 2-foot long pine cone, dozens of them dangling off trees above you while you're walking through the forest? It's absolutely incredible. They actually, typically grow more like 9 to 16 inches, but like I said, I believe the largest one on record was just under 2 feet, somewhere around 23 and a half inches. And the width is somewhere around, 5 to 8 inches across. Most are more like 5 or 6 inches, but absolutely incredible how big these pine cones can get. You wouldn't need many to start a good fire. And they actually sell these pine cones online for ridiculous amounts of money. Look it up, sugar pine cones, and you're gonna be probably as amazed as I was. The other tree that I looked up that was really impressive was the coulter pine. These pine cones are actually called widowmakers because they're so big and heavy. When they fall off the trees in the pine groves, they've been known to kill old-time loggers when they hit them in the head because they can weigh up to 5 kilograms, which is 11 pounds, an 11-pound pine cone. Now, they don't get quite as long as the sugar pine cone, but they do get quite lengthy. They can get anywhere from about 8 to 16 inches in length. I believe there's some more extreme examples up to about 20 inches, but it's the width and weight that really separates the coulter pine from the other pine cones. They can get, up to about 9 to 10 inches across in that 16 inches in length. And like I said, they're not as long as a sugar pine cone, but they are much beefier and bigger around, and then just one impressive looking pine cone. They make our pine cones here on the East Coast look pretty tiny and minuscule, but you have to go where you are. For all I know, there could be rules about collecting those pine cones out in California. So the coulter pine typically will grow from Southern California down to northern Mexico on the west coast of the United States. And the sugar pine will actually grow all the way from Oregon, so northwest, Pacific Northwest, all the way down to about the same area, to about Southern California, northern Mexico. So the sugar pine has a much larger region that it will grow versus the coulter pine, but they're both real impressive looking pine cones, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments what kind of pine trees you guys have, what kind of cones you have for your pine trees, and how they compare. And have you ever used a pine cone for a fire starter? Well, let's see just how many pine cones we actually have. Like I said, I collected these in probably an hour to an hour and a half. It really didn't take all that long. You may want to wear gloves when you collect pine cones because the resin can get on your hands and make your hands sticky. We're going to dump them into this 50-gallon tote, so we'll easily be able to get a pretty good guess of just how many pine cones are here. Say that's just about half full, maybe a hair under. So somewhere in the 20 to 25 gallons of pine cones, which is going to be plenty for multiple winters. So there are some other things you can try as well with these pine cones. I've seen people dip them in candle wax, and supposedly that makes an even better fire starter. I've never personally tried that. Let me know in the comments if you have. Did you like it over just a regular pine cone? And what do you think of it? So another thing you can actually do with pine cones is you can make Christmas wreaths. You can decorate your Christmas tree. I remember when I was a kid, for example, my mother had, it was basically garland made from a bunch of small pine cones. I'm assuming they were from a red pine. And it just has, some great memories of my childhood. And I'll always cherish those moments as a young boy, looking around the Christmas tree with all these pine cones hanging. And, like I said, there's a lot of things you can do with the majestic pine cone. They're one of nature's great gifts to us, and let's use them wisely. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hope you got something out of it. Maybe you learned more about pine cones than you really wanted to know. Maybe you thought it was kind of silly. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it, and I'll see you guys next time.